On the 3rd of November this year, Imran Khan, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, survived an assassination attempt. Months earlier, in April of the same year, he had resigned following a vote of no confidence in Parliament. If we were talking about any other country, we would say that Pakistan is in a really worrying political crisis. However, this kind of news is almost the norm in this country. Pakistan has been in political and economic chaos since its independence. But you may be wondering, what does Pakistan matter to me? Well, VisualPolitik viewers, Pakistan should matter to you, and a lot, for 3 simple reasons. The first is that it is the 5th most populated country in the planet, with more than 220 million people. What's more, it is considered one of the few countries in the world with nuclear weapons, and its nuclear doctrine is trigger happy, to say the least. In theory, it would only take someone invading their territory for them to be able to launch a nuclear bomb. But wait, because there's still a third reason: terrorism. Pakistan has all kinds of terrorist groups, in many cases, some which are supported by the state itself. In fact, do you remember where Osama bin Laden was killed? It was in Pakistan, and not just in any random hideout, but in the city of Abbottabad, which, to put things in perspective, is the Pakistani Beverly Hills. How could anyone ignore a country like Pakistan, which looks like it could blow up at any moment? The truth is that it is chilling just thinking about the 5th most populated country in the world, which also has nuclear weapons and is plagued by terrorism, which might fall apart. The situation in Pakistan is critical. After decades of instability, they are now on the verge of collapse. But how did Pakistan get to this point? Why is it in such dire straits, and what is holding it back so badly? Today, we're going to answer all of these questions, but first, let's look at some history.
The Pakistani Pandora's Box.
Did you know that in Pakistan, no prime minister who has won an election has ever finished his term in office? Pakistan has been mired in the darkness of political instability since its inception. In fact, the assassination attempt on Imran Khan is just one more event in a long line of Pakistan's chaotic history. And truth be told, seeing how others in the same position have ended up, he's actually been pretty lucky. Because do you know how the rest of them ended up? Either accused of corruption and in jail, or exiled, or even assassinated. Like the only female prime minister the country ever had, Benazir Bhutto. She was assassinated when she was running for a 3rd term. So I think you kind of get the idea. But let's slow down a bit to understand why Pakistan is the way it is. You see, Pakistan became independent from the British Empire in 1947, just like India. But the Pakistan you know now is not the Pakistan that became independent then. When Pakistan was liberated from Britain, it was divided into 2 territories, East Pakistan and West Pakistan. That is, what is the Pakistan we know now and Bangladesh. Soon, ethnic tensions arose, leading to a civil war that eventually separated the 2 territories. And in 1973, almost 2 years after the end of the war, Pakistan adopted a new constitution. This constitution recognizes Islam as the official religion, although it also accepts some elements of secularism. Of course, Pakistan is far from a perfect democracy, and in fact, it has 2 major problems: its security and its political institutions. You see, the military dominates the entire functioning of society and doesn't miss a beat. Logically, among its tasks is the security of the country, but its strategy against the external enemy, India, is quite drastic. In fact, the army itself baptized the strategy with the name of Bleeding India with 1,000 cuts. So what does this consist of? Very simple: train insurgents and destabilize India. So it's hardly surprising that we come across news stories like this one.
Pakistan trained militant underground groups to fight against India in Kashmir. Former Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf admitted in an interview with Spiegel.
But don't think he's only funded these groups to destabilize India. Look at what former Prime Minister Imran Khan himself has said.
The Pakistani army trained Al-Qaeda and all these groups to fight in Afghanistan. Imran Khan.
I mean, even the Pakistani leaders themselves do not deny that they have financed terrorist groups. And who do you think is being affected now? Indeed, it's Pakistan. As you can see, Pakistan is full of active terrorist groups, which continuously attack cities and towns in the country. Not even the capital, Islamabad, is spared. And, as if there were not enough, the poor citizens of this country have had to put up with tremendously unstable governments until today. Coup d'etats like the one in 1977 or in 1999, unrestrained corruption, assassination of politicians, in short, an odyssey. And guess who they have to thank for all this? Exactly. You've guessed it, it's the army again. The army has taken to removing and installing prime ministers left and right, and many times with the help of judges. And you may ask, why is the army so interested in running politics? For one simple reason: to protect its economic interests. You see, the military directly owns more than 50 companies, and it is believed that through foundations, it has thousands more companies under its control. In total, the Pakistani military is reportedly involved in businesses and deals which are valued at more than $20 billion. And these are not just any companies, but companies that dominate almost all of the national markets in which they operate. operate, such as the cereal, fertilizer, or gas distribution markets. Of course, as you can imagine, as soon as they see their interests in danger, they do not hesitate to accuse the Prime Minister of corruption. And you need to understand, given a country with so much political instability, an army with crucial companies in the country acting only to make money, along with a lack of security, economic decline is basically assured. And of course, if we add to this the fact that Pakistan hardly produces anything except from a few mangoes, vegetable oils, and trucks, then we have the ace of aces. In fact, the trade balance is really lousy. Take a look at this. Among the 3 largest countries on the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan is the worst performer in terms of exports and share of GDP. This is an indicator of its poor openness to the outside world and the poor competitiveness of its companies. But of course, if this was the extent of Pakistan's problems, we wouldn't be making this video. Stay tuned because we are just getting started.
Pakistan's best friend.
Imagine you wanted to put some solar panels on your house, but you had no money. What would you do? You would ask for a loan, right? Well, in a way, Pakistan has done the same thing, although switching investment for current spending. Because it wanted to provide public services, but it had no money because its economy could not afford it, it went into debt. The country has a debt as high as 70% of its GDP. And I know what you're going to say, let's see, 70% does not seem so high if we compare it to other countries like Spain, for example, which is 120%. But the difference is that Pakistan does not have an economy developed enough to support such level of indebtedness. The political risk, the lack of public revenue, and all of the problems we have described make 1. The demand for Pakistani debt very low, and 2. The rates at which the country is financed much higher. And if we take into account these factors, less money available and higher interest rates, then 70% becomes a real problem. In fact, their bonds are rated as junk bonds because naturally the question is, who in their right mind would lend them money? Well, apart from the IMF or the World Bank, their best friend is China. That's right, the Asian giant is Pakistan's main creditor. Pakistan was one of the first countries to recognize China in 1951. Both had a common adversary, India. In fact, with the outbreak of war between India and China in 1962, the two countries began to cooperate militarily. In recent years, almost 40% of China's arms exports have gone to Pakistan. In the 1990s, this cooperation was extended to the economic field, and since 2015, they agreed to create an economic corridor. You know what you're going to ask me? Is China really that interested in trading with a country that can barely support itself? Well, yes, it is. And for the reason why, take a look at this map. What you see here is the Gwadar port built by China. This port would eventually be China's lifeline. Why? Well, keep looking at our map. China buys oil from Arab countries. That oil travels by ship and passes along India's coasts. At any time, India, the United States, or one of its allies could cut off that transit. It would be enough to close these 3 straits you see on the screen to block all oil transit to China. However, if these ships dock in Pakistan, they could ship the oil overland. In other words, India or the United States could not have such an easy time cutting off transit. And let's see, this is going to be very good for China, but what does Pakistan get out of it? Well, about $62 billion in infrastructure construction projects. If Pakistan wants to have a productive economy, it needs ports, railroads, and roads. And very few would dare to put the money on the table to build those things. The reason lies in one word: terrorism. Pakistan is plagued by terrorist groups. Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, pro-independence groups, the list is endless. And all this means that even China has problems when it comes to building a port. Check this out.
Pakistan. Chinese nationals among 4 killed in Karachi blast.
To give you an idea, China has even proposed to wall off the entire port of Gwadar to protect it from terrorist groups. And all this explains why these loans from China come with higher interest rates than those from the IMF. While the IMF charges an interest rate of 3%, China charges about 6.5%. In other words, Pakistan is very unproductive, has a lot of risks, and at the same time maintains a savage debt with the IMF and with China. And you may ask, how are they getting along with the United States? Well, as you can imagine, the relationship status is, it's complicated. On the one hand, the United States is the main market for Pakistani products. Of the few goods that Pakistan exports, Uncle Sam is the most significant buyer. On the political front, however, relations are not good. During the Cold War, Pakistan was an ally against the Soviet Union. In those years, Washington trained insurgent groups to fight against the Soviets. However, everything changed when Pakistan started its nuclear program. Overnight, the White House cut off all arms supplies to Pakistan. But without a doubt, the biggest bone of contention is terrorism. Pakistan is a haven for a lot of terrorist groups. Think about it, Osama bin Laden was holed up in a nice neighborhood on the outskirts of Abbottabad. His house was just over a kilometer from the Pakistan Military Academy, so they were practically neighbors. But of course, no one knew anything. What's more, when the Navy SEALs entered bin Laden's house, they had to invade Pakistani airspace. This did not amuse the Pakistani government in the slightest. But all of this is a topic for another video. Today, we're going to focus on the crisis in this country. As we were saying, Pakistan is up to its eyebrows in debt. What's more, they want to pay off the debt they already have with more debt. As you can imagine, this is the perfect recipe for a collapse of galactic proportions. All it took was one big surprise event to end up bringing down the whole country. And the last few years have been full of surprise events. And we're going to look at them now.
Khan, the big disappointment.
Have you seen the videos we have dedicated to the energy crisis in Europe? If you remember, in recent months, the slogan in Europe has been, "We will pay whatever it takes to fill our gas tanks." That means that many LNG ships bound for Asia turned around and went to Europe, where they were paid much more. All of this is relatively good news for Europe, but there is a clear loser: the Asian countries that are running out of gas. And who has been one of the biggest losers in this crisis? That's right, Pakistan. You see, in these last 4 years, Pakistan has undergone several political and economic changes. The major political parties, the People's Party and the Nawaz Pakistani Muslim League, have seen their dominance in jeopardy. To give you an idea, the People's Party is the party that has ruled Pakistan for the most time. To make a quick comparison, we could say that they are the closest thing to a Western social democratic party. The Muslim League, in contrast, would be the equivalent of a conservative party. However, in 2018, the classic political outsider called forth to break with bipartisanship appeared. The typical charismatic leader who promises wonders on the campaign trail. In this case, it was all about a cricket star, which is the national sport in Pakistan. Exactly, we are talking about Imran Khan. Imran Khan's party ran in the 2018 elections, promising to improve the economy and build a welfare state under Islamic socialism. What's more, as the country's two major parties were riddled with corruption, he took the opportunity to also run on an anti-corruption message. And he ended up winning. Unfortunately, luck was not with him in his presidency. Shortly after winning, he had to face his first crisis, the COVID crisis. You already know that the COVID crisis stopped the entire global economy in its tracks, and Pakistan was not going to be an exception. And if its economy had already been stagnant, the COVID crisis would not make it easy for it to improve. But wait a minute, because that was just the beginning. What is the main source of energy in Pakistan's energy mix? Exactly, it's natural gas. However, this country has no international pipeline connection. They have tried to build one with Russia and another with Iran, but so far, none of these projects have materialized. Well, it turns out that Pakistan produces a little more than half of the gas it consumes, but the rest it has to import. And how does the gas get to Pakistan? Exactly, by liquefied natural gas ships. And as you know, liquefied natural gas is much more expensive than pipeline gas. And in Pakistan, there isn't exactly money to spare.
Nationwide power blackout plunges Pakistan into darkness.
But wait a minute, because this news is from before the Ukraine war. That is, before those LNG tankers turned around before reaching the ports of Pakistan and went to Europe. So as you can imagine, what's happening now in the middle of 2022, massive blackouts, skyrocketing energy prices, and factories which are shutting down. Conclusion, all that talk of a welfare state and a prosperous economy that Imran Khan promised in the election campaign seems like a bad joke. Meanwhile, creditors want their debts paid, and Pakistan has ended up devaluing its own currency. As you can see, $1 has gone from costing 100 rupees in 2017 to costing more than twice as much in 2022. The results? Even more inflation for the already suffering Pakistani citizens. If you look closely, Khan was accumulating the same symptoms that Sri Lanka had before collapsing and that we have already talked about on this channel. High debt, sky-high inflation, devalued currency, and shortages. So when it seemed that Khan was incapable of solving all the problems that were accumulating on the 10th of April 2022, he was kicked out. And the difference with the other prime ministers before him is that at least they did not accuse him of corruption, but rather it was the parliament itself that kicked him out through a vote of no confidence. This is the first time in Pakistan that a prime minister has been sacked in this way. Since then, Pakistan has had a caretaker government. In this case, the centre-right Muslim League has returned to power. They have already said that they will not call new elections until they have made some reforms to stabilise the country. The new president, Shahbaz Sharif, has a colossal task ahead of him. But now, the question is over to you. How do you think the new government will solve all these problems? What do you think its priority should be? Will Pakistan end up like Sri Lanka? And if so, what implications do you think this will have for international security? You can leave me your answers in the comments below. As always, don't forget that here on VisualPolitik, we release new videos every week. So subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell button down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you like this video, like it so we know, and I'll see you next time.